just kind of want to say, we're done. We're done. So I wanted to, one thing right now is that we just had a real short meditation, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, something like that. That's as much of a meditation as the 30 minutes we did before, right? In terms of the present moment, they're equal, if you're present, right? So every present moment is equal if you're present. I know it sounds like a truism. It is. But it's also true. Right? Each moment is equal. Which kind of relates to what I was thinking about speaking of tonight. Recently I saw this article about happiness over the course of one's life, and it was interesting. It said, people are kind of going along, and then after 40, there's like a big dip. If you're not there yet, then get ready. There's a big dip, and then at 50 it goes up again. So like the midlife crisis is not, just a figment of imagination. It's actually like this sort of, where people are...
J. It's a J shape.
Yeah.
It doesn't go up to the childhood happiness,
but there's some, and then there was like a peak at 70, right? And then like it was like better. So that people like are old age in general, these are generalizations when they do this sort of research, right? There's always the exception of somebody who's like on top of the world and someone who's just grumpy, okay? But yeah, there's a sort of, and then, what was it that, the interesting thing was, okay, what is it that after from like 50 to 70, what makes people kind of, their sense of satisfaction with life and happiness increases? Isn't that weird? Counterintuitive to what a lot of young people think is that the older you get, the worse you are, because you can't run and dance and do everything all night like you could when you were 20, right? And that's obviously like a better place to be. But you can remember, we start to do a little shift though. The older we get, we do make this sort of shift that we all understand now, is that we start to go from outer happiness to like inner happiness a little bit. It's like a natural shift that we start to focus more on the state of our mind and not just what our bodies can do. Like that's a natural thing that all of us go through. But for some reason, there's, even though you understand that when you're 40, you still, and then it's like this is it, and then at 50, yeah, this is it, There's like a kind of shift. Although nothing really changed, but there's some point of view that started to shift and change. I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and he's like, what is it about, sometimes I give the metaphor in meditation of like settling, like a glass of water that settles and then the mud settles. And the word settling, in English, settling, like settle down. You say to someone like calm down, like just settle. Or you can say also like we settled our accounts, like I paid my bill, so we're even, like I'm okay now, right? But you can also use like, she settled for him, like, she like compromised. It was sort of like a big compromise. Like you settled with this situation. And it doesn't mean you made peace with it. It meant that you feel like you made a sacrifice. Right? So there are different ways that we settle with our situation, right? And the same word kind of implies different things according to your use of that term. So in meditation, though, when the mind settles, it's a whole different kind of experience, isn't it? Right? It's not that I'm even with my account, I paid my bill. It's not that I made the sacrifice and like, okay, this is it. And it's, it's not that I've like calmed down from being upset like a kid at school, like settle down, you know, you're too excited. But there's a settling, which is why the sitting is really important to keep still. Because even though you're still, your mind is still moving. But then when you give some time, your mind can still be moving, but your awareness and your sense of self can be more settled. And perhaps that's something that naturally comes with age, is when you don't feel like you have to prove so much to others as much, and you don't have to prove so much to yourself. An important step in meditation is when you're not trying to prove to yourself that you can meditate, right? You're not trying to prove to anybody, because who are you anyway, right? I mean, the big question in meditation is, who are you? And if you're still trying to be a good meditator, then you're kind of holding on to this idea of yourself. You're trying to prove to yourself that you can meditate? That's kind of like, who's proving who to what? And, you know? So what is settling? What is settling? You know, and what is settling in meditation? And how does it relate to this happiness kind of J? This motion of life that we want to hopefully think is about what we call wisdom. You know, wisdom. One of the paramitas, one of the great qualities in Buddhist development of the mind and of kind of the path. There are these, in Mahayana, 6 great qualities, paramitas, great qualities. There's giving, generosity, and patience, and moral life, like, you know, and then there's energy, having vigor and motivation. There's mindfulness, and then there's wisdom. Wisdom is one of these paramitas. And the odd thing about wisdom is that it's not really something you can acquire, you can kind of make. You can't fake, you can't make up wisdom. You know? It's more something that you receive. Kind of like life, on its terms. And maybe the longer we go, the more we become receptive. And how does that relate to our meditation practice? Isn't our meditation practice about being really receptive? Isn't that what it's about? Receiving your experience, even just for a few moments, not on your terms. And if you can be in a sort of receptive view, point of view, receptive, accepting, equanimity, what state of mind you have? How have you settled? These are questions that I'm asking. You know, they're not answers or even suggestions. They're just, I'm wondering with you. How can we be 70 before we're 70? Yeah, because we may not get there physically, but we do want to get there in terms of our, you know, settling in our wisdom. We want to. Everyone wants to be happy. Let's admit it. Right? Everybody wants to be happy. The goal in life is to be happy. And if you ask different people, then everybody has different ideas of what will lead to that. But the general accepted view is that we all want to be happy. Individually, communally, you know, nationally, internationally. Everybody wants to be happy. I mean, the common view, the most common view is, you know, when I was thinking about this talk, I asked my kids, okay, give me an example of short-term happiness and long-term happiness. Okay? And my daughter gave the obvious answer. A short-term happiness is a candy. Yeah. And you can translate candy into your own sort of, grown-up candies, right? And long-term happiness, she said, a lot of candies. Which also made sense. They'll never run out. So of course it's going to last. My son was more sophisticated. He said the money, right? Money. I mean, he's already bought into what most of us believe. You can buy as many you want and translate those candies into cars or houses or people, whatever, right? Are we so different? Yeah, are we so different? I mean, so intellectually we are. Like, yeah, we understand the Dharma, and we understand teaching and spiritual teachings, and we kind of, we're above that. But in our automatic reactions, we're still like, I want to win the lottery. Or like, I want this, and I want to fulfill my desires, and I have a sort of hope that achieving these desires will make me happy. I don't really even articulate that, but that's kind of what's driving me. And that's the antithesis of the Buddha Dharma. It really is. I want to share with you a passage from the Dhammapada. This old translation, you have a better translation, but I'm going to use this old one. And there's a chapter on joy, which we can just understand as happiness. Oh, let us live in joy, in peace amongst those who struggle. Among men who struggle, let us live in peace. Let us live in joy. Although having nothing, in joy let us live like spirits of light. Victory brings hate, because the defeated man is unhappy. He who surrenders victory and defeat, this man finds joy. There is no fire like lust. There is no evil like hate. There is no pain like disharmony. There is no joy like nirvana. The hunger of passions is the greatest disease. Disharmony is the greatest sorrow. When you know this well, then you know that nirvana is the greatest joy. So, that's kind of,
Who translated this?
The translation here is Juan Mascaro. And this was first published in 1973. So it's a bit antiquated, meaning a little bit old, but hey, it's kind of poetic. You get the sense, though. You get the sense. And the sense is, it's not, we're making some serious mistakes in our thinking, in our reasoning. What is nirvana? Nirvana is understood as, kind of a blowing out, is kind of a end of these passions and these desires. Right? It doesn't mean that you don't, participate in the world, and you don't eat and drink, and multiply. You don't have all these things. You don't love, and you don't cry. No. But you don't do it driven by a passion for your own self-affirmation. Okay? You're not driven, as said here, these hungers of passion is the greatest disease. Okay? So we kind of suffer, many of us suffer from this mental disease. And the disease is we're driven by these passions, believing that achieving them will make us happy. Right? Now, because we're stubborn humans, we make the same mistake over and over again, and we still follow the same passions, hoping that there'll be a difference in the result this time. Right? And we go through years of, hope and disappointment, and the suffering that goes around that, thinking, yeah, maybe this time it'll work. We don't even articulate that. We just often don't even see a different way. We don't even see a different way. Is there another way other than just like doing what everybody does and hoping for the best and maybe more success will make me happier? At some point, we become what's called disillusioned. And the turn towards the Dharma involves a bit of that disillusionment. Disillusionment is a good word because it means we're no longer fooled by the illusion that these passions will make you happy. That's the illusion. That's the disease of the mind. The mental disease is that we think fulfilling our passions will make us happy. We're not fulfilling passions just because we're animals fulfilling passions. No, we're fulfilling passions thinking, I want to be happy. I really want to be happy. But we kind of are tricked, or have this disease of the illusion is, this will do it. So the disillusionment is to say, wait a second, I'm going to learn from my experience, okay? I'm not going to take it by the Buddha's word. I'm going to look at my experience and say, well, this hasn't been working so well or consistently. Yeah, sometimes it makes me happy, but then I end up wanting something else and I'm back to my same old, complaining self. How do I kind of gain some wisdom and the peace of nirvana, the joy that the Buddha talks about here? That this disillusionment, this nirvana, which means no longer being a slave to these passions. In the next chapter, which is called, actually a few chapters later, called The Monk, and the Buddha writes, good is the control of the eye, and good is the control of the ear, good is the control of the smell, and good is the control of taste. Good is the control of the body, and good is the control of words. Good is the control of the mind, and good is the control of our whole inner life. The man whose hands are controlled, whose feet are controlled, whose words are controlled, who is self-controlled in all things, who finds inner joy, whose mind is self-possessed, who is one and who has found perfect peace. This man I call a monk. Nice. That means there's many monks who are not monks. And there are many lay people who are monks and nuns. But we see here that, being free from our passions doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen. The practice is, a pretty involved one. Right? Happiness doesn't happen by chance. Okay? It is the fruit of deep and constant practice. What does that practice involve? It involves mindfulness, definitely. Okay? Because if you're dreaming about these passions that you think will make you happy, when you should actually just be focusing on walking, but you're daydreaming about everything you would do if you were in Hawaii, right? That's not mindful. Being mindful is realizing, what am I thinking? And coming back, okay? that going to open up the happiness? No. Right? What do we think happiness is? One of the illusions we have also is what joy actually is and what happiness is. If we think joy and happiness is some sort of ecstasy, okay, that's drugs, right? Or whatever passion you've fulfilled, which vanishes in an instant. Just because it was high and extreme doesn't mean it's happy. Just means it was high and extreme. Mindfulness. So again, what I'm asking us is, what is happiness? Right? When have you really experienced it? What is joy? When have you experienced it? What is the experience of being free from, your passions? Of being free of desires and hopes that this will make you happy? What is the experience when suddenly you don't need anything? Have you had that experience? Maybe for a moment of not needing anything? Nothing. When all desires have been blown out. That moment of nirvana. Maybe it didn't last, but can you recall a moment? I'm sure. And if you don't, it's just because your memory is faulty. So mindfulness and concentration and letting go, the practice of meditation that we've been doing here and that I tried to encourage us with, are all related to that sense of let yourself be disillusioned. Let yourself be disillusioned. That dream, okay, is a dream. Right? Turn back to your moment. What happens when you pay attention to something? What is the quality of your experience when you're actually looking at it and not looking at your thoughts about it? When you're not comparing, when you're not judging, when you're not remembering another time when it was better, when you're not thinking about the future when you hope it'll be better, but when you have just this moment, what's the quality of your experience? Why are we looking for happiness somewhere else? What is your experience now? Let yourself be disillusioned. Is it just about getting rid of everything? Well, I want to offer you a short passage from Master Dogen. And Dogen, who was the 12th and 13th century founder of Soto Zen, he wrote this great passage, which was this essay on cooking. It's called Instructions for the Cook. And in it, near the end of it, of this essay, he talks about 3 states of mind: the joyful mind, the parental mind, and the great mind, magnanimous mind. The huge mind, the big mind, parental mind, motherly, fatherly mind, and joyful mind was the first one. So, in the Dhammapada, the joy is related very much to, disillusionment, dispassion, letting go. But sometimes that can seem a little dry. You have to admit. Okay? A little dry. So, there's a balance in life. It's not just what you're not thinking. Remember, your mind you can't get rid of. It's also what you're thinking. Right? You can't deny your thoughts. And that's an important aspect of meditation that I've tried to encourage as well. You can't deny them. So what do we do with them? When we're outside of meditation, and we're not actually just, turning away from thought, there is cultivation of thought. There is cultivation of positive thought. And how can that relate? Thich Nhat Hanh calls it watering positive seeds. You have these seeds of thought, and can you encourage them? He talks about the thoughts that relate to what's called these 4 immeasurable qualities, Brahma Viharas, of loving kindness, compassion, joy, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. That watering those thoughts is very helpful to your happiness. You want to be happy? Wish happiness to someone else. That's loving kindness. See what happens to your mind when you wish somebody else happiness. You want to be happy? What about her? So here's what Dogen says. That joyful mind. Okay. He also said, in performing your duties as a cook, you should maintain joyful mind. Joyful mind is the mind that rejoices. That's interesting. Joyful mind is the mind that rejoices. That's interesting. I mean, maybe the English is odd to you, but rejoicing is something you actually do. It's not just that I had this joy. You're actually making joy here. You're cultivating. You're rejoicing. Right? What is rejoicing? It's celebrating something. It means that you find something worthy of celebration. What is it here that he said? You should think, if I were born in the realm of gods, I would be attached to pleasure and would not arouse the aspiration for enlightenment, nor have the opportunity to practice. How then could I cook food to offer everybody? If I were God, let's say like somebody who's like really rich and had everything for me, I mean the gods, you don't have to go to metaphors. You can just say like people who have everything they ever could think of and don't have to do anything and just call it room service, right? I would be totally attached to that, thinking I can't live without my jet. What am I going to do? And or whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be so big. But if I have everything I think I need, or I have a life of pleasure, I would be not only be attached to it, but how much aspiration would I have to really practice? How much aspiration I would have to really practice? So I should rejoice the fact that I don't have everything, that my life is not so easy. Because that actually motivates me to practice more. That's what he's saying. You should rejoice in your situation because you are turning towards the Dharma. That is a cause for celebration. The difficulties you encounter are cause for rejoicing. We usually think, how can I overcome this? And this is a real turn. How to transform your difficulties into your path. This is what Dogen is suggesting here. He's saying, it's really good that you don't have such an easy life. Because if you did, where would your motivation to practice come? If you feel like something's missing, you'll just pick up the phone and order it. Until the end of life, and it's like, why am I still thinking about what I want? So again, your difficulties, or dukkha, as the Buddha calls it, will help your disillusionment. And this is what Dogen is suggesting. And that is a cause for rejoicing. Now, I'm not going to say, bring it on, thank you, give me more. I mean, that's also an extreme, called, masochism. No, I'm not going to say just like, give me more difficulty. But the difficulty that I will inevitably, without a doubt, experience in life, because life involves aging and sickness and death, and it involves all the other difficulties that are coming our way and here right now with us. No matter what. I just heard someone in the doorway. She said, hi, it's nice to see you, but I have to go. My grandfather just died. Okay. Dukkha. It's at our doorway. right? Whether it's the death of a loved one or whether it's just a missed bus. Like, it's going to be there. Does that mean I should want more? No. But what Dogen is saying is, instead of saying, God damn, we can say, and we're not going to say yay, but we're going to say, this is now my practice. This is my practice. Thank God that I have this practice. Right? That's the rejoicing. The rejoicing is not that I have the dukkha, but that I have the practice that will enable me to wisely engage. That's the real rejoicing. That my mind can keep turning towards practice with every situation. And that's the source of joy. I should rejoice for that. I'm not rejoicing for the dukkha. I'm rejoicing for the mind that can aspire to enlightenment. So yes, you should cultivate these thoughts when you're out and about and going around town and facing your life with poise and dignity and wisdom, because that is your right. And if happiness comes, so be it. But in the meantime, let's aim for a little disillusionment and not disappointment. So because it is late, if anyone has a question, then you can just come and ask me, but others may need to leave. So I'll stay behind. Let us just spend 1 minute to come back to our natural sitting. So we're going to dedicate our practice to our own well-being and the well-being of all others. Those in the room, those outside the room, in the city, country, and world. May all beings be happy and free of suffering. Live in peace and at ease, and continue that way. Thank you for your practice tonight. It was good to sit with you all.